Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks.
Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try to make your world a little weirder. I'm Niall.
And I, children of the night. I'm Kyle. I'm not.
Oh, I didn't know if you were going for like a vampire thing this week.
No, I was for a second, and I immediately got scared. Not that I got scared of the vampire act was so good that I kind of immediately was like, well,
oh no, that's what I assumed. I assumed that you spooked yourself with the veracity of your vampire impression.
For a brief second there before I dropped character, I was about to lunge.
I saw the terror in your eyes.
Yeah,
you were somehow in the same instant. You're both predatory and also just horrified and scared.
Yeah,
like it was really, frankly, emotionally, like it was an emotional upheaval for me.
And can I just say, kind of erotic.
I mean, that just comes with the territory.
That's what I'm saying. Look, kind of comes with the territory.
Vampires are just they're bi icons.
Ooh, I hope you don't bite my sexy little neck.
Yeah,
you
don't drink my lifeblood that brings the warmth to my bosom.
Don't make me don't make me join the ranks of the undead.
Yeah.
I get why it's hot now. I just now realized.
Oh, you just figured out why vampires are sexy?
Yeah, just now.
It took you a little while.
Yeah, it took me a minute, but I'm getting it now.
Most people just watch like one vampire movie and get it, but it took you a little while.
Well, I kind of had a fucked up route since I think one of the first vampire movies I can think of is Vampires on Bikini Beach, and that's dog shit.
Oh, shouts out to the person in our Discord that unearthed a very awful YouTube rip of that movie.
Yeah, that's Kyle and Niall lore that, like, we watched this.
That's the deep lore.
That's some deep cut stuff that we watched this terrible horror movie back in the day, and one of our listeners found it. So shouts out to
And they found it as the USA Up All Night version with intros by Gilbert Gottfried.
Yes. Now, Niall, I'm also realizing something.
Oh, do we have an email?
We do have an email this
I vaguely remembered seeing one come in, but I didn't read it.
I glanced at it, to be completely honest, listener. So I didn't
fully
digest
vet this email?
No, okay. I didn't digest it, but
so here's hoping that no one that listens to our show sent in some truly wild shit.
Yeah. So it says here, a follow-up episode 204. And it says, I came across this while listening to your podcast and wanted to share it. You mentioned what might come after and how COINTELPRO may have morphed. This might answer that question to an extent. I had similar questions and it was informative. The author is an assistant professor of criminology and Jacobin contributor. Thanks. I really enjoyed your podcast. I realize you might not want to click this random link. So if you're interested, here's the title. And it is Brendan McQuaid, the New COINTELPRO and the Modern Pinkertons, Political Policing in the United. Okay. Hey, look, I haven't read the article yet. I'm going to be honest with you. But now that I've read this email, I want to read the article.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And if you don't trust the link, you have the name of the article. So everyone can just give that one a Google.
Look it up. Cool. Well, thank you, listener. I'll check that one out, and if I remember, I'll try and bring it up on another episode.
But COINTELPRO actually morphed into they have a podcasting unit, and we're part of a psyop that is trying to basically, by IDing listeners of a show like this, we then create a database.
Yeah, we're a honeypot. We're a honeypot, and our job is to, I guess, COINTELPRO you.
We're gonna tickle. Which, bringing it back around, I COINTELPRO'd you was the name of episode 204.
Oh my God, Jesus Christ!
It's funny how our comedic rhythms haven't changed in like fucking 4 years.
We really gotta mature at some point. I think.
Oh well. Look, we'll mature at some point. This week's not looking too good.
Yeah.
Next week's not looking great either. So we'll keep you up to date on that. However, well, this is not a mature week. This is a week of Spooky Ween. We are in the Spooky Ween season. We're in the Halloween season. So I decided it was time to look up a haunting.
Ooh, okay. Now that's interesting.
Yes.
Because I feel like Niall is not typically the haunting guy.
No.
You've done a number, but like...
I do them occasionally, but usually when I look through the last, like, however many episodes, and it's like, okay, we've done, like, a UFO thing, we've done a big conspiracy thing, we've done aliens, we've done, like... And I'm like, okay, so it seems like we're due. Like, that is when I typically reach for a haunting, is when it feels like we're kind of due for one. Otherwise, I just, like, fucking dig into the deep lore of conspiracy and just try to find some ridiculous shit.
I don't remember the name, but I think the last haunting that you covered was the like ghost the ghost horseman carriage, the ghost carriage and
lady,
the like
whatever
lady. Yeah. So
I don't remember when that was, but that was a fun one that I found while doing my I found that topic while looking into time skips.
Okay.
Where because it basically there's an area in. Okay, so here's a thing that I'm just going to put out there right now. We're back in England. I don't know why. I don't try to find England hauntings, but there are just a lot of them. So we're going to take a trip back to England this week, much like that horse-drawn carriage was, I believe, in at least on the British Isles, if not actually in England. I believe it was in England though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am. We're doing a haunting.
Well, what have you got for me, Niall? Because I feel like I spent a lot of my younger days, even before the podcast, reading about hauntings. So I'm curious if you can surprise me.
Here's the thing. You may not recognize the. So I'm talking about ghosts in a specific place called Raynham Hall. Okay. You may not know the name Raynham Hall, but I think you might know the most the most known haunting of this place because it is a pretty landmark use of spirit photography. And also just like a pretty famous ghost photo.
I'm gonna throw my guess out.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this the ghost supposedly descending the staircase?
The brown lady of Raynham Hall.
I'm glad I was able to call that because it just goes to show you spend a ton of time as a teenager reading about hauntings and you think maybe one day this will pay off, will become a paranormal investigator. No, you're going to fucking have a called shot on a podcast many years later. So awesome.
And honestly, that's better. You know, it's because now your called shot is on recorded medium and I definitely won't edit it out to keep myself the king of called shots.
Come on.
Because
I can at least be the prince.
Look, watch the fucking throne. Okay.
All right, fine. But I'm just saying, like, when you retire as king, I'm gonna step in.
Because that's what kings do. They don't get like murdered or.
That's right.
Sorry, assassinated. Because you can't murder a famous person. You can only assassinate them.
That's true. That is the rule.
That's the rule. All right. So let's dig in because that is by far the most prominent haunting at this place, but there are some other ones.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with just some history of Raynham Hall to give you some context.
I love it.
And now, before we get started, there actually is another Raynham Hall that's in Long Island that also has some hauntings associated with it.
Fuck.
We're not doing that one. That is another topic that I've just like thrown in my back pocket to look into later because I think it's really funny that there's two haunted Raynham Halls on two different continents. But we're talking about the one in England. So
all right.
Keep that in mind. So a lot of history, I found a very good resource for this topic, hauntedpalaceblog.wordpress.com. They did the most extensive fucking like 2-part write-up on the history of all of this shit. It was really helpful in doing research for this episode. So a lot of the historical facts and stuff, shouts out to Haunted Palace Blog. So Raynham Hall was built in 1619 by Sir Roger Townsend. And, there's some stuff about who designed it and everything. It was basically, it was designed by a person named Inigo Jones, which only matters as much to explain that this place is like known for its like grandeur and like the scale of all of its stuff. And like, it was a very like momentous building at its time.
Okay.
So the fact that it's notable who designed this building really just goes to show what kind of fucking like because this was kind of a pushing forward in terms of architecture. It was like leaning more modern than places around it. Now that doesn't mean a lot because we're in 1600s, so you're not going to like it doesn't look modern now.
But to the 17th century man, it's notable.
Yes. Now, Sir Roger Townsend, unfortunately, didn't really live to get to hang out in his house too much.
Sir Roger Townsend. Now, any relation to strapping young lad Devin Townsend?
I have absolutely no idea.
Because maybe there's like a lineage there that led to Ziltoid the Omniscient.
That would be very interesting if that because like
there's only one Townsend family in the world. I mean,
yeah, honestly, like if you go back on that family tree far enough, you might be able to come across here because the Townsend family, I believe, still exists. They owned this whole place for like over 300 years. Like it's this hall was in their family for a very, very fucking long time.
Must be nice.
Sir Roger Townsend was a politician who was in the House of Commons from 1621 to 1629. And you know, so his house was under construction for a very long time and didn't finish. It was not completed building until 1637, which is the same year that Roger Townsend died.
Ooh, bummer. Didn't get a chance to savor the nice new digs.
Yeah. It is a 7,000 acre estate.
Jesus.
And it's one of the oldest buildings in Norfolk. And the Townsend family has lived there for more than 400 years. Sorry. I thought it was 300. But I guess they still have like some the place is still under private ownership. I don't know if it's still under the Townsend name.
Okay.
But it's this place is still under private ownership, so you can't actually.
What if this is how we find out the metal guitarist and vocalist Devin Townsend owns a mansion in
a 7,000 acre estate in Norfolk? Yeah. Jesus Christ, that would be. I mean, you can build a hell of a recording studio on that property.
That's where he goes to just sit and you know ponder new metal songs such as "Oh My Fucking God."
Yeah.
Which what's the Strapping Young Lad album?
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
I like Devin Townsend, but was never as deep in it as you were. So I did meet the man though. That was fun.
What? Wait, what?
Yeah, I have a picture with me and Devin Townsend.
Really?
He was at Sweetwater Gear Fest when I worked at 1 year.
Oh my God, that's so sick.
Yeah. So that was cool. Now the most famous resident of this house and the person that a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about, a main character in the story of the Brown Lady is Charles Townsend, who is the I think the son of the previous Roger Townsend. He lived from 1674 to 1738. Sorry, no, he would have been grandson of Roger Townsend, I believe.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And he was a pretty notable politician. He was the leader of the House of Lords in his time, which is like a parliamentary body.
I was gonna say I don't actually know what the House of Lords does. I just assume it's a group of stuffy old white men who put on like powdered wigs and.
I think they do still use the powdered wigs. I'm not 100% on that, but I do believe there's some level of pageantry involved in that stuff to this day. Now, during World War II, the British military did requisition Raynham Hall. And so there were a bunch of soldiers living there with the Townsends until the war ended. And there's still like bullet holes in the in the walls of this house. So the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall is a person that is believed to be, I guess. It's not 100% confirmed because it's a ghost. But everyone believes it to be the spirit of one Dorothy Townsend, who was the second wife of Lord Townsend, who in this case was Charles Townsend. So it's the person we were just talking about. Who she's the sister of a famous Whig politician, which that's the political party, the Whigs.
Yes, yeah.
And the first British Prime Minister, Sir Robert Walpole. So she comes from politician stock.
Okay.
And she's the aunt of prolific writer, historian, and politician Horace Walpole. So Townsends and Walpoles are like two big name families, I guess, in British politics. I don't know this. I just know this from doing research on this episode. So here's the story of Dorothy and Charles. They supposedly fell deeply in love when Dorothy was living with her family, and Lord Charles Townshend was like a charge of the family, like he was being taken care of by the family because I think his parents were dead or something. Basically he was living with the Walpole family, and they fell in love kind of secretly. And when Charles asked for Dorothy's hand, like permission to ask for Dorothy to marry him, Robert Walpole basically was like, "No, you're like." It reads like basically they were too close and had too, like, the father saw it too much as brother sister for him to like be okay with that. So despite the fact they were deeply in love and they weren't actually related by blood at all, as far as we know, with the British royal, like British upper crust families, fair. I have no idea, but they don't seem to actually be related. However, he refused to give permission. He was afraid that people would see that he was using his guardianship to basically marry his daughter into a high class line of the Townshend family.
And that's frowned upon?
I guess.
That just seems like the kind of thing they'd want to do.
Yeah, it really seems like that was the point of like...
That's what marriage was all about, right? Like that's what... I don't know.
Now, the one thing about this that is like weird now, but I guess wasn't that weird at that point, was...
They were actually brother and sister?
No.
Oh, okay.
Dorothy was like 10 or 11 at the time.
Oh, boy. All right.
And Charles was weird. Not like ridiculously older, but like a little bit older.
22, 23.
No, I think he was like 15 or 16.
Okay. Well, it's still weird.
Yeah, but it's back then, like the age of marriage for women was like 12.
Great.
That was when you were legally allowed, and men had to be 14, I believe.
It's really cool. Great.
So they basically it was a little young, but it wasn't like
unheard of
for the time in that way, you know?
Yeah.
So take that as you will.
And I will.
So Charles basically is distraught at this, but he then pretty soon afterwards gets married to a woman named Elizabeth Pelham, who's another daughter of a baron.
Sorry, I am now kind of digesting the concept that like a 14-year-old and a like 11-year-old
were trying to get married.
Not just get married, but like feel like they understood the concept of love. That they were deeply, fucked up,
wild. So Elizabeth then died in 1711, leaving Charles a widower with 5 surviving children
at the age of 14.
No, this was like I don't know exactly how old he was, but he wasn't like old or anything at that time still. But he had 5 children, and Dorothy. At that point, he was reunited with Dorothy, and the two actually married in 1713. So in that in the middle of that time period, when Charles was married to Elizabeth and was having 5 children and everything, Dorothy started to have an affair with a somewhat notorious womanizer of the era named Lord Wharton, who we'll talk more about in a little bit. And the story goes that when Charles and Everly found out about this affair that she had been having, which, depending on who you ask, either stopped when they got married or continued into her marriage to Charles, he just flew into this like fit of rage and was just saw red and locked Dorothy in a room and forbade her from ever seeing her children or anyone else like ever again. And she remained there imprisoned for the rest of her life until her death in 1726, when she died from smallpox.
Men would rather imprison their wives than go to therapy.
Well, that's actually, keep that in mind. We'll talk, because there's a whole thing about this that I find very interesting, and honestly, like, colors a lot of the perception I have of ghost stories from this era of Britain.
Okay. Now also consider how much of a fuckboy you have to be to have hundreds of years your reputation as a womanizer like survive you.
I've got more on all of these people, and it's we'll get there. It's very interesting. So there are some kind of variations in terms of Dorothy's death. One story supposes that she died of a broken neck after falling or being pushed down the stairs. And there's also a whole other theory that the funeral in 1726 was a sham and Dorothy was actually still alive. I didn't find much else about that one.
Oh my God, you can't just they can't just like lay out a ghostly conspiracy about this without embellishing on it.
That's kind of this. There's this like weird tangent that just like, yeah, she also the fucking thing might actually just not have happened.
Yeah.
But then there is there also are reports that actually we'll save that. Basically, after this supposed death, a couple of years later, I think it's in like the 1730s, we get some of the first sightings of a ghost in this house. So a quick digression before we get into more about these people and the ghost stories.
Sure.
Talking about women locked up in mansions.
Yeah.
There is a whole thing to that. And it comes from the rise of Gothic literature. So this is a thing that I've never really fully put together. Like they kind of just exist. They coexist in my brain. I've never linked them to each other. But this is a thing I found very interesting. It was from someone writing about this account of the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall and how it relates to the tropes of the Byronic hero and also Gothic literature of the day. So the beginning in many people's eyes of Gothic literature starts in with Horace Walpole's, who that name sounds familiar because it's Dorothy's cousin, I think. Wrote a book called The Castle of Otranto in 1764, and this was kind of one of the earlier types of Gothic literature, which they include elements of ancestral curses, rambling castles with hidden passageways, and supernatural elements. That they also then in 1794, Anne Radcliffe in the book Mysteries of Udolpho introduced the brooding figure of the Gothic villain that was later defined as the Byronic hero. And this is basically the like very kind of emotional, distant, but like will fly into a rage kind of like controlling husband type that you see in a lot of these old stories. So like Gothic literature then turned into a whole genre that eclipsed people like Jane Eyre, Mary Shelley. Jane Eyre is the book. Charlotte Bronte is the writer. Jesus. Bram Stoker, Wilkie Collins, and various other people. And this led to a kind of a rise of this fear amongst women of being locked away by these male relatives that just fly into these fits of rage and try to control your life heavily.
Why? What? Sorry. Why are they afraid of that?
It just swept. It's like it's a thing that would be not entirely dissimilar from how like women's power was available at the time. Like, cause you are so under the thumb of your husband.
See, you're giving me a serious answer to a question that was kind of
that's fair.
a joke.
I realize that it kind of is a joke, but this was the thing that there are times that I come upon stuff while doing research for this podcast and I'm like, that just like clicked this thing into my brain that made a lot of things make sense. Sure. And the idea of a lot of these British ghosts being these like abused wives that were like shut away and now they roam the halls of these stately manors being like entirely made up by the rise of Gothic literature is just like a really interesting concept to me.
It makes sense. It does track with everything.
Yeah. Now it doesn't explain all the ghosts or anything, but there's a lot of these like wandering women spirits in various places, even in America.
Yeah.
But that were like, treated poorly during their lives or never got to be with their lover or whatever. And they pine.
I mean, every fucking state in the United States, just about, as far as I can tell, has a tragic backstory woman in white ghost.
Yeah.
Some places, I think Indiana has multiple.
I believe we do. I think I looked into that when I did a women in white episode, like fucking
that's
6
a long
years ago.
time ago.
But yeah, so this was just, I thought this was so fascinating that there's like a reason for all of this shit. So yeah, the Gothic elements lead very heavily into the Brown Lady legend, which is weird to say it like that, but that's what they call her, the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall, or Dorothy Walpole. So let's get into some of our people here, because there's some history on all of these major characters that'll get into where all this stuff, like how all this stuff works. So Dorothy, or Dolly Walpole, born 18th of September 1686 at Hauntings Hall in Norfolk, to a wealthy landowning family. She was the 13th child.
Good start.
Of Mary Burwell and Colonel Robert Walpole, who, like I said, a Whig politician.
I'm always astounded when somebody has a children count greater than 3. It's insane.
Yeah.
Why would you keep going? I don't get it.
It's wild. Like, I mean, back then it was, a lot of them died and stuff, but there really is like the shift of like people having 5+ kids being normal to now like 2 is the normal.
Yeah. And now, like so many people, it's just like people just like don't want to have kids anymore, which is like, of course not. Like, why would you?
Yeah. So we talked a bit about, the marriages and all this stuff, but there was a 2009 interview there was an interview given by the current at that time Lord Raynham to BBC Norfolk, where he basically talked about the idea that Dorothy had been abused and that was the reason for this haunting and everything. And it turns out there's not a lot of historical record for that. He said people said that Dorothy was locked away and badly treated, but in the 1960s we uncovered paperwork and medical reports suggesting she had a happy life and was much loved.
Oh, well.
Basically everything we have about Dorothy was from remarks people made after her death, or in some correspondence a little bit while she was alive, but most of it is posthumous. But it really seemed like she wasn't.
Everything was chill.
Everything was fine.
Yeah.
She was pretty happy. She had kids. She got to marry the guy that she wanted to marry when she was 12, but couldn't. Or 10 or whatever, however old she was, and seemed to be pretty well. Like there are people that think there was some problems where she spent too much money constantly. I of course can't verify that from the 1700s. But all in all, it basically seems like the genesis for this is kind of iffy.
It brings me no joy to say this, but women be shopping.
Jesus. So let's talk about Lord Charles Townshend real quick. So he was the ward of the Walpole family. He met this 10-year-old girl that he fell in love with, and then he married another woman who died. But he was a politician, and a thing that was notable about his life that I just thought was kind of interesting was he really championed turnips as a crop in Britain. Because he found that it was it worked well in their soil and it became a good feeder crop for cattle. And he basically, like, through force of will, introduced large-scale turnip production to Britain, and he became known as Turnip Townshend.
Oh my God. Okay, so first of all, that other dude survives history known as a womanizing fucking guy.
Yep.
This guy decided, my place in the history books, I'm the turnip guy.
I'm the turnip
That's
guy.
amazing.
And yet again, the whole idea of him being this abusive and evil guy, very few people can speak to that at all. Most people describe him as the most unsullied character for integrity, honor, and disinterestedness, and gave several striking proofs that he could command the natural warmth of his temper.
Okay.
This is people writing in the fucking 1700s. It's gonna sound weird.
Well, they wrote funny. That's all I'm laughing at.
Basically, his neighbors loved him. Everyone thought that he was great. No one had any problems with this man.
They loved the turnip thing.
They loved the turnip thing. Oh yeah, that old Turnip Townshend. Yeah, he lives down the lane, Raynham Hall. So yeah, he basically doesn't seem like this. So the actuality of the situation seems like there probably wasn't.
It was probably
that situation,
fine. Well, that's good to hear.
There is the whole thing about the Whartons, which I found very, very interesting. So the Whartons are Lord Thomas Wharton and Lucy Wharton. Lord Thomas Wharton is the known womanizer that Dorothy supposedly had an affair with. So let's talk about him real quick, just because
I can't wait to find out about this dude.
He was born in August of 1648. They were a very wealthy family. He became a distinguished Whig politician who was violently anti-Catholic.
Oh, well.
He sided with the Duke of Monmouth, who was the illegitimate son of Charles II, who was trying to basically take his place as his father's heir in place of the Catholic James II.
I've had to talk about the Duke of Monmouth in a Ghost episode before.
Probably, yeah. He might if it was a ghost, it might be he might be a couple places, because supposedly he might haunt Raynham Hall as well.
Okay,
but we'll talk about that later. So basically he was in that whole time where like the Protestants and the Catholics were trying to figure out like the monarchy in Britain. He was like very much on the anti-Catholic side and trying to get the king position to be let's see, Charles II as opposed to James II, because he didn't like Catholics. So there are a bunch of other things, like some political stuff that he did, but he also was a known libertine, a brilliant swordsman, a debaucher, and when he needed to be, a manipulative liar.
Oh boy.
People sarcastically named him Honest Tom, as it was believed that no one could trust him. And here's a quote, of all the liars of his time, he was the most deliberate, the most inventive, and the most circumstantial.
Wow. Okay.
In 1673, he married the granddaughter of the Dowager Duchess of Rochester, named Anne. And when he tried to marry this woman, the Duke of Rochester tried to like prevent it from happening, because this guy already had a reputation of being just like a total wild man.
And at the age of 14, no less.
Yeah. Let's see. When was that? So he was born in 1648, and this was 73. So he was 25.
Okay. Well, I was a little off, but
yeah. But Anne was noted as bookish, clever, a poet, and a writer. But she wanted to marry this guy anyway, and they ended up getting married, and Wharton neglected her in favor of all of his mistresses.
Oh boy.
And she died from syphilis that he might have given her.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yep.
Jesus.
So Wharton was like, there are a lot of people that hated this man. There are also a lot of people that thought he was a lot of fun. So he was a very kind of divisive figure.
Jesus
but
Christ.
To the Tories, he was a borderline satanic figure. They fucking hated this guy.
Oh my God. Jesus
let's
Christ.
See.
That's insane. What a psycho.
Jonathan Swift, who's I think he was a writer at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had deep animosity towards Wharton, and when Wharton passed him over for a preferment, which I guess is something in British politics, I don't
Who
know
gives
exactly.
A shit?
He wrote a number of pieces on the quote unquote diabolical Wharton and called him the most universal villain I ever knew.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The juicy drama.
Yep. And Swift literally made a wish in some of his writings. May it please God to shorten the life of Lord Wharton and set up his son in his place. Which eventually did happen. Lord Wharton died in 1715, and turns out his son Philip Wharton, ended up being much like his father, and was actually one of the founders of the original Hellfire Club.
What?
Yep, Philip Wharton.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the guy that was in Dorothy's life. Now, his second wife, Lucy Wharton, was very much in the same vein as Lord Wharton. He married Lord Wharton, or she married Lord Wharton shortly after the death of his first wife. I think like, I don't know, like a year after her death or something like that. And
everybody grieves differently, Niall.
Yeah. Some people just launch themselves into a brand new marriage. But they basically both just kept having affairs and just like didn't care about each other. They just kind of did whatever. But she actually also at sometimes would help Lord Wharton seduce young girls. and it was noted his character was so infamous and his lady's subservience so notorious that no young woman could be 4 and 20 hours under their roof with the safety to her reputation. So this is how Dorothy kind of... Supposedly, the story goes that Dorothy started to try to hang out with this person under the auspices of hanging out with his wife, and his wife was like kind of drawing her in. And they were almost using Dorothy being at the Wharton estate as like a political attack, because if she is known as being a person that hangs out with the Whartons, then she is a wild woman, effectively. Like she is a harlot.
Oh my God. Okay.
And
Jesus.
so but it did lead to some like tension between her and Lady Lucy Wharton. But eventually Robert Walpole, her father, literally came over and stormed to their house and removed Dorothy.
Oh my God. Can I don't, did you see the news, quote unquote, the news, about Paul Newman's fuck hut?
No. What is this?
Oh my God.
So Paul Newman has his line of salad dressings. And then he also, has a fuck hut.
There was this story that came out that I guess, I can't remember exactly all I remember is that the story came out that Paul Newman and his wife, who I unfortunately don't know her name, he made some comment that came out recently about how his wife turned him into a sexual creature, and that they had a place on their, like, where they lived that they would go to have sex, and he called it their fuck hut.
That's cool.
And what I'm getting at with bringing this up is Paul Newman and his wife developing the fuck hut is the opposite energy of these two people getting together and trying to be seducing.
Trying to seduce the innocents.
It's the complete opposite energy. I support Paul Newman's fuck hut.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying.
Yeah, look, we're pro fuck hut on this podcast. We're anti trying to like predatorially bring in young women. Like
you're gonna have to Google Paul Newman's fuck hut.
I will.
I'm not. I didn't make that up. This is a thing that's been going around. Hopefully, I'm gonna Google it and make sure that wasn't a fake story. But you go ahead.
Like the time that you thought that, who was it that Woody Harrelson was going by another name that we debunked live on the podcast?
Yeah.
Like Swirl or something. It was some weird shit that you read.
I'm a stupid person. Okay, uprocks.com, Jezebel.com. Paul Newman was very horny for wife Joanne Woodward. New memoir reveals confirmed Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward had a fuck hut. Cool. Good for them.
Yeah. So now let's get into the actual haunting, because we talked all about the people. Let's talk about the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall.
Yeah.
So the general thing here is people have reported seeing a ghostly figure of an aristocratic-looking lady wearing an old-fashioned brown dress in various locations across this house, particularly in the upstairs corridor, on the grand staircase, and there's one particular bedroom that she supposedly has appeared in multiple times.
Okay, so she has a brown dress. They didn't call her Brown Lady because she like shit her pants or anything.
No.
Okay.
No. She's wearing a brown dress. Now in the picture, I don't know. There's a reason the picture looks the way it is, and we'll talk about that later. But let's go and talk about some sightings, because there are various sightings throughout history of her in this house.
I can picture the actual, like, quote unquote, supposedly haunted photograph in my mind. I can picture what this is. So yeah. I'm excited to learn the history because I don't know it.
So the first claim of a ghost sighting in this house was by Lucia C. Stone in a Christmas gathering at Raynham Hall in 1835. Stone says that Charles Townshend had invited various guests to the hall, including one Colonel Loftus, to join in the Christmas festivities. Loftus and another guest named Hawkins were the first two people to actually see the ghost. They were going to their bedrooms, and they saw this woman in a brown dress kind of walking towards them in the hallways outside of their bedrooms. Then the following evening, Loftus claims to have seen the brown lady again. And he says that time he was drawn to the specter's empty eye sockets in the face. They were like, she had like a kind of a glowing face with really empty black eye sockets. And this left kind of a big impression on him. This kind of started this uproar around the gathering that led to various staff permanently leaving Raynham Hall because that shit's haunted and they didn't want to deal with it. And the story started to circulate. After this, there was a reported sighting made in 1836 by Captain Frederick Marriott, who was a friend of the novelist Charles Dickens. And he also was an author himself. He wrote a series of popular sea novels of like sea adventures, I guess.
Cool.
He also was supposedly a noted skeptic of ghosts and came specifically to try to debunk this phenomena. And so he specifically requested that he spend the night in the haunted room at Raynham Hall to prove his theory that this haunting was caused by local smugglers anxious to keep people away from the area. Yes, so he thought this was a fucking Scooby-Doo episode.
Scooby-Doo plot. Okay.
He came to this house and was like, I'm going to stay in the haunted room because I'm going to prove that this is capitalism.
Okay.
I'm going to prove that this is people trying to like bring in goods to bypass like tariffs.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah. So he stayed in there for the first 2 nights. Nothing happened. He just kind of slept in his bed, but he did keep a gun under his pillow in case anything happened in the middle of the night.
Really incredible. Maybe I don't know what the rules of ghosts are at the time, but like really incredible thing to keep on yourself in case it but I guess this guy does think it's smugglers. So, okay, fair enough. I retract my statement.
Yeah. So it makes perfect sense.
Let the record
He's just going to shoot that fucking smuggler. So on the evening of the third night, just as he was changing for bed, he heard a knock on his door. 2 people in the group that were staying at this house came to ask Marriott's opinion on a new gun that had recently arrived from London. They were examining the gun, looking at it, like testing it out. I don't know, whatever you do,
just shooting walls and like.
No, I think they were like probably like looking at the fucking gold filigree because these are all rich fucks in Britain in the like 1800s. So that they're all doing that, and eventually the men decided to accompany Marriott back to his room and joked that he should take the gun with him to protect himself from the brown lady. The 3 men were going along this dark and gloomy corridor when suddenly they saw the brown lady carrying a light approaching them. They originally thought that it was just someone in their party, and they actually like tried to like hide in an open room because they wanted to like protect modesty, I guess, is what they were saying. So they tried to like, because they thought a woman was like wandering around half clothed at night to go to the bathroom or something. So they were trying to like not be creepy, I guess. Now, as the figure continued to approach, Marriott recognized her as the one from the portrait in the room he was staying in. And he realized that this was not someone from the party and was actually the ghost that he was looking for. So what did he do? He immediately pulled out the gun initially to confront her. He was going to jump out basically and try to like get a confession from this person because he still thought it was a fake thing.
Yeah, dressing up.
But before he could even do that, the apparition stopped in front of where he and the others were concealing themselves and turned to face him. And supposedly, this is a direct quote, grinned in a malicious and diabolical manner. And right after that, Marriott shot the woman, and the woman vanished, with the bullet lodging in the door across the way. And Marriott never really went back there. He left like the next day, and didn't ever really like, didn't question the brown lady anymore.
That's what you get for being a skeptic.
Yeah. Now, his daughter actually chronicled the experience. Her father's experience in a book that was written in 1891.
So the story of this is a secondhand one.
A lot of this stuff is, and we'll get to that also later.
Okay.
So here's what Florence Marriott is the name of the daughter. And here's what she says. He took possession of the room in which the portrait of the apparition hung, and in which she had been often seen, and slept each night with a loaded revolver under his pillow. For 2 days, however, he saw nothing, and the third was to be the limit of his stay. On the third night, however, 2 young men, nephews of the baronet, knocked at his door as he was undressing to go to bed, and asked him to step over to their room, and gave them his opinion on a new gun that just arrived from London. My father was in his shirt and trousers, but as the hour was late and everybody had retired to rest except themselves, he prepared to accompany them as he was. As they were leaving the room, he caught up his revolver. In case you meet the brown lady, he said, laughing. When the inspection of the gun was over, the young men in the same spirit declared they would accompany my father back again. In case you meet the brown lady, they repeated, laughing also. The 3 gentlemen therefore returned in company. The corridor was long and dark, for the lights had been extinguished, but as they reached the middle of it, they saw the glimmer of a lamp coming towards them from the other end. One of the ladies going to visit the nurseries, whispered the young Townsends to my father. Now the bedroom door and that corridor faced each other, and each room had a double door with a space between, as is the case in many old-fashioned houses. My father, as I have said, was in shirt and trousers only, and his native modesty made him feel uncomfortable, so he slipped within one of the outer doors in order to conceal himself until the lady should have passed by. I have heard him describe how he watched her approaching nearer and nearer through the opening in the door until, as she was close enough for him to distinguish the colors and style of her costume, he recognized the figures as the facsimile of the portrait of the brown lady. He had his finger on the trigger of his revolver and was about to demand it to stop and give the reason for its presence there, when the figure halted of its own accord before the door behind which he stood, and holding the lighted lamp she carried to her features, grinned in a malicious and diabolical manner at him. This act so infuriated my father, who was anything but lamb-like in disposition, that he sprang into the corridor with a bound and discharged the revolver right in her face.
Jesus Christ. If that had been a real person...
I would have blown their head off.
Oh my God.
The figure instantly disappeared, the figure at which for several minutes 3 men had been looking together, and the bullet passed through the outer door of the room on the opposite side of the corridor and lodged in the panel of the inner one. My father never attempted again to interfere with the brown lady of Raynham.
Wow.
So sightings then did continue into... There's a couple people that will come into prominence here soon. Gladys, I think is how you would say this name, and her son George, who were later descendants of the Townsend line that lived in the house in the early 1900s. So they would continue to see the brown lady along with some other apparitions, which we'll talk about, and the son George and a friend claiming to have met a lady on the staircase who not only frightened but puzzled them because they could see the stairs through her. And supposedly at one point, King George himself visited the property and woke up to find the lady standing over his bed, hair disheveled, eyes wild. He fled immediately, swearing to not spend another hour in the accursed house, for tonight I have seen that which I hope to God I never see again. Now, a weird thing about this particular thing with King George is that this account gets told of 2 different places. One of which is Raynham Hall, and the other one is a nearby place called Sandringham House, which is another location that Lady Dorothy supposedly wanders. She supposedly has spent her time in 3 different houses. The Haughton House, which is where she was born, the Raynham Hall, which is where all of this takes place, and then Sandringham House, which I believe was like a summer home or something. It was basically like she has in later years been seen more at these other places than Raynham Hall. I don't really know why. But the haunting rose to a more modern prominence over 200 years after the death of Dorothy Townsend. On September 19th, 1936, when the magazine Country Life sent photographers on assignment to Raynham Hall in Norfolk to take what is probably history's most famous example of spirit photography.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the picture that you will have seen before it comes from. It comes from 1936, the magazine Country Life. They captured a quote-unquote ethereal, veiled form gliding down the hall's main staircase and is widely believed to be the Brown Lady of Raynham. So, there's the picture.
I pulled it up again because I wanted to get another good look at it, and yeah, it's a fun picture. I am curious how much history you have of the actual taking of the photo and whatnot. What if you know anything about that?
Kind of.
Okay.
So this. Okay. So I feel like to talk about where this photo came from, we have to talk a little bit about Gladys Townsend, I guess. It's GWLADYS. I'm reading that as Gladys in kind of a thing, but
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. So Gladys, who is the Dowager Marchioness Townsend at the time, I do not understand British royalty, like
no idea,
honoraries.
None.
I don't understand what the fuck they are, but she published a book of quote unquote true ghost stories. The main one of which was The Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. And this book was published a year before these spirit photographs were taken. She wrote, I must confess I believe in ghosts, and I have for many years lived in a definitely haunted house. Let's see. She came into this whole thing in 1899 when John Townsend inherited the estate in bankruptcy, which forced him to sell off most of the family art collection, rent out the hall, and find a rich wife, which he did when he married Gladys Southerst, who was the daughter of a successful lawyer in 1905. Then, after the Marquess Townsend's death in 1921, the Townsend family returned to its seat, I guess, like prominence in the local stuff. I don't exactly know. And the Dowager Marchioness Gladys took on the onerous task of restoring Raynham. So yeah, she started to take in a lot of stories about hauntings around the area. She was into spiritualism. She was into all of the stuff that was kind of popular at the time in the British kind of socialite upper crust kind of scene.
That was kind of in the back of my mind, as if there is a spiritualism connection to the photo.
Yes. I mean, it was intended as spirit photography, so it's kind of in that vein at the time. And so the entire thing of bringing country life in and all this stuff was in part just because it was a local thing. It was a thing that people were interested in, and it was that kind of stuff was popular at the time. But also Gladys, the Dowager Marchioness, basically used her interest in spiritualism and ghosts and stuff to write a book about haunted houses that included her own house, the Raynham Hall, entitled True Ghost Stories, that was published in 1936. It was a compilation of 32 tales that did include the Brown Lady legend, but it basically was published, and that was how this kind of spread. It was honestly this woman being interested in ghosts and writing a book that involved this legend, and it became popular. It was a pretty successful unorthodox publicity stunt to try to put the house back on the quote-unquote cultural map. So, like, there were sightings that were not related to this at all, but the chronicling of it and the kind of the reason that country life came in and everything was because the person that owned the house at the time was really into ghosts and spiritualism and decided to, like, try to use that interest to drum up interest in her house again.
Okay. Interesting.
So there are other ghosts that we're seeing around here. I couldn't find any. There's supposedly a ghost cocker spaniel that I could not find any sightings of anywhere. But I had to fit in a dead dog somewhere.
God damn it.
But I do have a little bit on one of the other ghosts, maybe the second most prominent ghost, which is that of the Duke of Monmouth.
Oh, okay. Oh, I wouldn't have expected him to be like that prominent, but okay.
He's like the second, well, because it's him, Dorothy, a cocker spaniel, and two ghostly children, which I guess are two children of the Townsend family that also I didn't find a lot of stuff about. They just, like, every single source that's talking about the Brown Ladies, like, there also were other ghosts here, a cocker spaniel, two ghostly children, and the Duke of Monmouth, and, like, nothing. But I did find some stuff about the Duke of Monmouth somewhere else. So let's just run through that real quick. Yeah, let's run through that real quick, and then I've got a little bit about the spirit photograph to end us. So, James Scott, or the Duke of Monmouth, was the illegitimate son of King Charles II, and he was accused of high treason in 1683 because of a conspiracy to kill his father, the king. He was then forced to flee from England and seek shelter in the Netherlands, and he only returned to England after his father's death to try to claim the English throne, which at that point belonged to his uncle. And he even tried to claim that his uncle killed his father with poison, but was eventually arrested in 1685 and was executed at Tower Hill not long after. And after he was buried, people suddenly realized that he had never had a portrait. And so they exhumed his body, sewed his head back on, and made a portrait of him.
Oh my God. What?
Yeah.
You can do that?
They tried to.
Jesus.
But he was also thought to maybe be the man in the Iron Mask. Do you know what this?
I'm aware of the film.
Yeah, the British lore of the man in the Iron Mask.
I actually don't know what the lore is. I've never seen the movie and don't know anything about it. So it exists.
He was a prisoner with an unknown identity in the prisons of Louis XIV. He wore this mask, and he's a historical figure that no one knows who it is, supposedly. And some people think that Jacob II couldn't bring himself to kill his nephew, so he shipped him off to France to be imprisoned in one of these places and was given that iron mask to take over, to basically hide his identity. And he is the mythical man in the Iron Mask. So that's just an interesting little tidbit of history. But supposedly, after his death, he has been seen haunting the halls of Raynham Hall.
While wearing the Iron Mask?
No, not with the Iron Mask. Just like, because I don't know why this is, but there's something about when you're haunting a place, it typically is like how you looked when you were there. Because when Dorothy haunts Raynham Hall, she's older and looks much closer to what she does when she's like near her death. But when she's at Southingham, what was that other one? Sandringham Hall. She looks like what she did when she was younger, like when she was like in her. I don't know. When her
the ghost rules here are that it's you look in death how you did while you were living in that place.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk a little about the spirit photograph and what people think about it. So, a lot of people think it was faked. It's pretty heavily debated that that's not a ghost at all. But the method in which that was done is open to some debate. Some people think that the image was faked by putting grease or something on the lens in the shape of a figure. And other people think it was an accidental double exposure, or that light somehow got into the camera, creating this like fake.
Yeah, that's
thing.
The classic.
But Joe Nickel, who does a lot of detailed examination of the photograph, shows evidence of a double exposure. And some other people wrote, there's a pale line above each stair tread indicating that one picture has been superimposed over the other. A patch of reflected light at the top of the right-hand banister appears twice. Then a magician named John Booth wrote that the photograph could easily be duplicated by naturalistic methods. He had a magician named Ron Wilson cover himself in a bed sheet and come down the grand staircase at the Magic Castle in Hollywood.
Wow.
And they were able to pretty similarly fake the ghost image.
I did not know he had such a career after assassinating Lincoln.
Yeah. He became a magician. He's just doing some debunking, you know? The man has to live. Now, other people, this is the part that I found really interesting, point out that if you look at the actual figure in the picture, it looks very similar to the like stereotypical Virgin Mary statue in Catholic churches.
Go on, yeah.
The way that it's like poised and like its hands and everything.
I'm gonna look at it again.
If you look at if you just look up Virgin Mary statue, you will see the one that everyone knows.
Yeah,
and it looks almost exactly like. But if you blur it, it looks like the picture. So honestly, what it seems to be is a picture of the staircase superimposed with a blurry version of the statue of the Virgin Mary.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I can see that. Interesting.
Yep.
I'd never heard that explanation for this photo before.
So yeah, I thought that was interesting. It's a little bit about spirit photography, a lot about the lives of messy British people.
Yeah. A bunch of messy bitches.
Yeah.
That's so funny. God, I love that throughout history we are still just fucking all this crazy shit that we're doing and how people act. It's not that different.
So occasionally there are now private tours of Raynham Hall that you can go to, but it's rare because it's still used as a private home. It is still there. You can find pictures of it online. Supposedly you can tour the grounds pretty easily, but like the actual house is much harder. So if you ever want to go hang out on a 7,000 acre estate in Norfolk, you can go there.
Okay.
But
I do kind of want to do that.
You probably won't see a ghost.
Well, I was getting my hopes up.
Yeah. So big question time, right?
Yeah.
You want to do a big question? This is kind of simple, but I was going into it and I was thinking, I don't think we've talked about this. If you had to be a ghost, where would you want to haunt for all of eternity?
You want to know something? I think we have talked about this.
Have we?
But maybe my answer's changed.
Yeah, because I feel like, time changes everything.
I think that my thought is just like, I want to haunt somewhere where there's a lot of variation in like a lot of aesthetic variation. Like the things around me are. So you know what my mind immediately goes to?
What?
Some sort of very big mall.
See, that would be interesting. The only thing is malls are dying.
That's true. But I mean, we don't know what it's like from the perspective of a ghost because ghosts also don't seem to like see reality necessarily the same way we do. They seem to sort of see things from when they were alive a lot of the times.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking if I can think of the coolest mall I've ever been to, which is actually kind of tough, but maybe like I feel like there was like a mall in like Denver that I went to when I was young. I was like, oh, this place is cool. And there's all kinds of cool shit there. They got a fucking EB Games or whatever. And, so I'm thinking a mall just because I could go from shop to shop and it would be less boring than just like one singular house, you know? Yeah. But realistically, it would be kind of nice to just like haunt somewhere with like beautiful scenery around it, like nature.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about some outdoor places because I think that haunting like a house is cool, but like the first thing that came to mind was there's a place that I went to in Portland called it was like a Japanese garden that that was really wonderful, and it was like right next to a hybrid rose test garden where they're like trying out like experimental rose variants. So like being able to haunt just some place like that's like a nice like kind of calm, cool place would be really interesting.
The thing is, I was kind of like defaulting to like ghost rules that I was sort of thinking of as being like, oh, well, you have to be like a location, like a human built place. Yeah. But that's not true. I mean,
that's human built. Like they made that place.
But even so, like there are hauntings in forests and things. So like maybe I would just want to haunt like.
No, that's the actual last haunted place I did, the Hoya Baciu Forest.
That's true. Oh, that's true. Yeah. I would maybe I would want to haunt somewhere like really nice in Appalachia, or maybe I could just haunt can I just like haunt all of Glasgow?
Actually, can I just haunt Jeff Bezos' house?
Now, here's the thing.
But only if I'm like one of those spirits that can like move shit and like throw stuff.
Oh, okay. Okay, I was going to say, because Jeff Bezos, I mean, that's a big, stupid mansion, you know? That can't be that exciting.
I mean, it just gets tormented.
Like, that I'm with. I'm with that. Tormenting Jeff Bezos, I'm here for it. It is sad to consider that maybe Jeff Bezos outlives you in this scenario, but it's but I guess I just think about like I've been in a mansion or two in my life, and I'm like, these are cool, but they're also like big and kind of lonely.
Yeah, I kind of don't get the appeal. I get the appeal of like a decent sized house.
I want a nice warm cabin.
Yeah. I need places to store all my shit.
Sure.
But I don't need
a huge dining hall that, I just want a nice sizable cabin somewhere where there's nice nature and just
maybe an indoor bowling alley.
Okay.
Just fuck it. Like
bowling
maybe
alley
like
could be kind of fun.
Thing.
Especially if people are coming and bowling while you're haunting the place.
Yeah.
You maybe throw the ball off course so it ramps off the gutter ball and goes through the ceiling. Like it happens in those funny YouTube videos like Fail Army shit. That could be kind of fun.
Okay, I want to be a ghost that just can make ramps at will so that I can just fuck with stuff like that.
Yeah.
That would be my thing.
I want to haunt that Hollywood Boulevard where everybody puts their hands in the cement.
Oh yeah? Outside the Chinese theater?
Yeah, and I would put my fat ass and nuts in the cement and they'd always have to repave over it and stuff. And
God damn it. You got the ghostly dick print again.
Ghost ass is here again. Get the cement going, mix it up again. Fuck.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
That'd be fun. I've never thought about that, just interfering with...
I wasn't considering about prank value. I was considering I have to be here for eternity.
Yeah.
What scenery
I mean, that's really up to how you want to look at it. Because for eternity, I would rather spend time in a nice outdoor locale that I can kind of hang out in than I would Jeff Bezos's mansion.
Right.
But
for the prank value.
Yeah.
I want to, and honestly.
And Jeff, this is comedy. I'm not actually going to haunt your fucking house.
Well, I might. And, to be a fly in the wall when Elon Musk broke up with Grimes or whatever, that would be so fucking
Have you seen
funny.
the thing that supposedly he now is trying to reverse Canadian girlfriend her, where he's saying that she was a manifestation of his fucking whatever. It's this whole thing that I only read a bit of, so I can't talk at length about. But it was he's basically saying she was made up when she's an extant human being.
It sounds completely fucking insane.
Yeah.
But I would expect no less from Elon.
But
Musk.
listen to this man and his understanding of simulation theory.
Yeah, sure.
Seems like a good idea. So on that note,
yeah.
Probably not the best note, but on that note, let's go take care of some business. If you want to follow us, you can follow us on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers from Stitcher to Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird and we're probably there.
You know what? I don't bring it up often enough. I always forget. Twitch.tv/ItGetsWeird. We stream sometimes on weekends.
You much more than me.
Yes, but we've done it before together a couple times, and I would just recommend people go check that out. I've been streaming with friend of the show Colin, who's also on Pop Culture Roll Call. So just go check us out there, and also email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Where would you haunt? Would it be for prank value or scenery value, or do you have an amazing blend of both where you get the best value out of both things? I'd be curious to think if people had some thoughts on that. Yeah. And then patreon.com/itgetsweird. Above all, you got to check this one out. We have a $2 tier and a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, we have It Gets Weird TV, where we just started watching the X-Files season 1. People vote on what we get to watch and talk about on that show. And you can listen to us talk about X-Files at the $2 tier. At the $5 tier, you get access to the It Gets Weird TV show, as well as in the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV, a bonus show that it's a bunch of different stuff. Niall and I
it varies
do stuff.
week to week.
So you get It Gets Weird TV and those bonus shows. You're getting bonus content every single week at the $5 tier. We also have a $1 tier, which is just you kicking us a buck saying, hey, I enjoy the show. Here's a tip. Thanks for doing what you do. You don't get anything out of it, just the satisfaction of helping out your favorite weird podcast. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to our mainline show episodes 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday. And you get access to the Discord where you can talk to us and other fans of the show. And if you can't donate to us, if money's tight, then I implore you, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.